My name is Lidia Khudova. I'm a teacher at BKC IH Moscow, and I've been teaching since 1999, being an IELTS and Cambridge examiner at the same time. Just a short introduction. And now a few words about our topic today. So let's talk about common mistakes students normally make in the four skills, the so-called passive ones, and the so-called active ones. As you know, linguists call reading and writing passive skills, but they are far from passive. And you as a student, as a participant, are far from being passive. For example, reading a text in, say, a CAE Cambridge exam, you face quite a lot of texts and 34 tasks in the space of an hour and 15 minutes. So your brain works quite actively. And for example, in listening, if you take, say again, CAE listening, you face 30 questions in the space of 40 minutes. So again, you have to concentrate and deal with different tasks. So back on track, back to common mistakes. From my experience, I would like to say in reading, for example, the common mistakes are not sticking to the text. So basically, stick to the given text. What I mean here is, for example, when you face a text about chess, and there, for example, they say that chess is one of the oldest games, which originated in India, but no one knows who actually invented the game. And one of the options says that it's the oldest game. It's actually a trap, because one of the oldest is not the same as the oldest. So I hope you see what I mean. The same applies to much easier texts. For example, in, say, New English File, reading tasks, when they ask you, for example, what could Boris do when he was a child, which made him special. And if you write, for example, that he could play the piano, there's nothing special about being able to play the piano. Whereas if you underline that he could play the piano at the age of 3, that makes him special. So again, put down something definite from the text, but not something general. So stick to the text and try to avoid your background knowledge. So to speak. Right. Moving on to listening. Sometimes when especially lower levels don't know what to say and what to write there, they normally put down some unclear words or phrases, like instead of love, for instance, or CLS instead of clothes, which is again something which doesn't make sense. So for example, when you listen to a gap-filled text and you're supposed to fill in the gaps, write something and check it for logics. So make sure it's logical and makes sense. Another tip here is that sometimes with the same word as clothes, you might face the same word in the text above. So just check the other sentences in the same paragraph. You might find the spelling of this word for you to do it correctly and fill in the gap correctly. So again, check for spelling tips above or below. That's basically about common mistakes, as we don't have that much time to cover them in depth. Now let's move on to the active skills, like speaking, as I'm doing now, and writing. For instance, in writing, you should be very attentive again to see the format of the task. So if they ask you to write a letter, normally, when first time faced with this task, learners, again, tend to write a text, which is made of just one paragraph, which is not a letter. And we have to, again, bear in mind that there should be a greeting or a kind of introduction, dear someone, or hello someone, again, depending on the register. Then comes the very first paragraph with one of the ideas you would like to introduce, followed by a second one, and again, depending on how many ideas you would like to put in your letter, you subdivide them into separate paragraphs. And then, again, best wishes, or best regards, or yours sincerely. Again, I hope you remember about the register, but not buy. You're not gonna buy or sell anything, or some even write boy, which is very nice, but still nothing to do with this letter, or even the classical buy, because again, you're not talking to the person face to face, you're not saying goodbye, but you are actually writing a letter in our case. So, better to avoid it. And no matter how shy you are, remember to write your name at the very end of your letter. Because again, it shows your knowledge of the letter layout. Basically, that's to do with common mistakes in writing. And finally, common mistakes in speaking. Unless it's a presentation or a clip, which you're watching now, you should remember two things. The first being turn-taking and listening as well as speaking. And by listening, I don't mean the classical Russian sitting and watching the person or sitting and looking into the eyes and stuff like that, but I mean active listening. So turn-taking and active listening. Here I mean such phrases as, really, how come, did you, and some other active listening techniques. If you don't use them, you might come across as a bit rude, which is not that pleasant in a conversation. And turn-taking again, avoid monologues, like you're watching a 10-minute monologue, almost. Unless it's a presentation, again I'm repeating myself, but unless it's a presentation, you should remember about the other participant of this speaking act. And finally, synonyms. For some reason, Russian speakers or Russian learners like the adjective interesting, which is not interesting at all. So try to think of some synonyms which correspond with your mood, personality, opinion. For example, nice, good, pleasant, attractive, if you're quite a calm and subdued person, and fascinating, excellent, splendid, captivating, gripping, if you're a bit more emotional. Well, that's pretty much it to do with common mistakes in the four skills, the passive and the active ones. I hope the presentation and the clip was interesting, exciting, and I wish you all the very best in your language studies.